Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
It is such a cool time to be a Canadian film fan as our stories are getting much more and more layered and representative and just fantastic, giving a real portrait of who we are as a nation and as a people. And if you are within the sound of my voice, guess what? That must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm assuming you do. I'm assuming you're listening right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us basically wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google. It's all good. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you could give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd really appreciate it. Also, you can find us on the social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And as an added bonus, we're on TikTok at In the Seats for a little bit of fun too. But before the fun, finally, come visit us over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, movies, and beyond. Because we love writing about the moving image and we love it when you come read about it. So please stop on by. On this episode, oh boy, this is a good one. We are looking into the film Akilla's Escape, which you may have heard played TIFF last year. And it's been doing the rounds, but it is now available on video on demand from our friends at Level Film on most major platforms. And it is a fantastic film. It is basically a Canadian crime noir, as it were, as we follow Akilla Brown, played by very deftly by Saul Williams. And in the aftermath of a robbery, we see this young man who is who is confronting a cycle of generational violence that he thought he had escaped, but it really is staring him down in the face every day, and it's one of those. It's something that people of color have to live with sort of every day of their lives, and it's not. It's a horrible thing, but it's an interesting. It's a crime thriller that has a real message to it, and we got the uniquely distinct pleasure. It was our pleasure. He says it was his pleasure, but definitely it was our pleasure to sit down with the one and only writer-director of the film, Charles Officer, about the origins of the film and sort of getting it made and sort of putting this out there into the universe, putting this kind of story out there that really makes a statement but still manages to be incredibly entertaining all at the same time. It is a fantastic film that I really cannot recommend enough. But before you go check out the film, check out our talk with Charles, because it's one of my better ones. It's one of our better ones. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to the day I get to talk to Charles again. But enjoy our talk about the film, and go check out Akilla's Escape on basically any VOD platform right now. All right. Well, I mean, obviously, just to kick it off, congratulations on the film. I mean, I got to see it last TIFF, and I got to see it again just recently. I absolutely loved it. But I mean, walk me through the origin, because this character is such a unique guy. Like, walk me through sort of the origin of this story.
Yeah, the origin of the story came out of it's filmmaking. It's come from personal experiences as well as world experiences and what I've been seeing from my youth. It really came out of my question about the politics, violence, and political strife out of Jamaica, and a little bit before I was born, but it was something that was prevalent in the storytelling through my family, that intersected with the work that I was doing with youth in Toronto, and just looking at what it means when you have had certain experiences growing up and you become quote unquote a man, and you have these experiences, and how that man leads the next generation of youth towards making choices about their lives and what they're doing. And it came out of like that space of working with youth and actually finding some youth that were just harder to reach. And so this idea of Akilla and this character came from what happens if you are kind of confronting yourself and who you could have been, who what you have experienced, and how does that man actually see that and not walk away and actually try to recognize the trauma in youth and do something about it, and not be passive about it, not just say that it's like, there's some other kid that isn't connected to myself, and someone else deal with it. And that comes from actually doing social work, and it comes from actually being in a community and seeing that we often have, older brothers who are basically guiding the youth. And I've found that that there are some older brothers who do not guide the young brothers properly.
Yeah.
Even though they had the experience, they know the dangers of it. They know that it isn't, they know what it is. And when you do know what it is, why would one ignore that they know what it is? That may sound a little bit convoluted or in the head, but it's like emotionally, it's when you are facing someone, and I'm speaking particularly about Black boys, it's when you see the circumstances or the situation they're in. Like, I can't personally in my life, I had struggles with that of turning away from that. And I want to portray a character who actually has to confront that and has to make a choice, and that is beyond himself. And so that's really at the heart of it. It's recognizing the trauma when you can, and what do you do when you do recognize that trauma in someone else, or that path that could lead to further trauma or death. So that is, and I've also just really love noir and these characters that I've seen that kind of are more brooding, more quiet, more methodical, and keeping the things internalized. And I haven't seen that much with a Black lead,
right,
in cinema making, and I want to offer my own interpretation of that, and that hence became Akilla's Escape.
Well, I mean, the film is so nuanced and it's so layered, and I mean, Akilla really comes alive thanks to Saul's performance, who
Yes.
obviously is a character in and of himself. But I've got to ask, because I did have the chance to talk to Saul, like, you might be the first time a director has asked his leading man to actually do the score for the film at the same time. It almost felt like that put an extra layer on his performance going forward. Like, can you walk me through just not only your relationship with Saul, but sort of, I guess, the mindset of having Saul do double duty on this? Because it really felt that much more personal and connected thanks to that sort of extra layer of him doing the score added to the film.
Yeah, I mean, I met Saul many, many years ago when he was, we debuted in this film called Slam, and I was going to theater school in New York and going to the New Yorkian Cafe on Fridays and listen to these amazing poets, and from Saul to Mums, and from Oz, and who recently passed away, unfortunately. But they were so inspiring, and then seeing him in Slam, and his music and his level of street smarts and understanding the nuances of the culture. I just over the years, even as long as we've been friends, I didn't really tell him much about this project, because I was just writing it and working on it with him in mind, and we'd hang out and I'd watch him and think about it, and it was almost like casting over like years, and just he just would bring a level of his own experiences to this role that wouldn't be something that I think another actor, I'm not even would would bring their self to it, but there's a danger with some of these characters that you want to play them in a way that you've seen it done before. You want to, so, and he's got to be this machismo, sort of tough, character who has to wear it all in that manner. And I feel like, Saul in himself has a true understanding of the masculinity and femininity that makes us whole. And he's a father. He has a son who was pretty close to the age of the young character in the film. And to be honest, at one point I was thinking of casting his son as well. But I just felt like Saul would bring a layer of worldly understanding, from hip hop culture to Afro-punk to beat jazz to everything. So he embodied this human being that I felt that I wanted Akilla to represent. And yeah, and with the score, like, again, like, I have been one of Saul's like biggest fans from the early stages of engaging with him, and lyrically and musically and creatively. I think he's just this phenomenal rounded artist that I wanted to I wanted to make a vanity project with Saul Williams. And I think that with the musicality of him, it's actually how he speaks, and there's something with him that is it's just in his DNA. And I felt like if I was to ask him, and he would agree to contribute to the score and making music for the film, it would immerse him even further into the way he was seeing his character and then the story as a whole. And there came a time where he had to actually obviously put that away and just focus on his performance and acting and working with us, because Saul is I've always wanted to see him do more. And I think that he's often asked to do, yeah, just play the poet on the street, like, saying this or do this, or and to just be the leading man, and to have, layers and a backstory and not just a cameo. He has such incredible range in his vocabulary that I just really wanted to have that opportunity to you never know how many times you get to make things, and I want to take full advantage of the time that I had him. And he's so connected in the music world, and which was how we connected with Robert Del Neja from Massive Attack. I mean, he was already creating music and collaborating as musicians sometimes jam together and they make stuff. They don't know where it's going and where it will go and where it will end up, but he was already creating stuff. And when he read the script, he's like, Charles, we've been working on this sort of music, and I think this might be something that works for Akilla. And as soon as I listened to it, I mean, it was just a no-brainer, and that I wanted to have that sound. I mean, I grew up also on Massive Attack, and has been working to that music and the mood of it and the vibe of it, and I was just I was just blown away that this opportunity even was presented, and yeah, so it allowed him to just actually have his hands in the creativity and how we were going to finally present the film. And I just thought that was a cool way to just work with an artist.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that, especially that dub sound, really does feel sort of emblematic of sort of the universe that you created. And I mean, there's something about this film that, I mean, honestly, to me, it almost feels innately Canadian, because I mean, especially with Akilla as a character, on one end, we get this very empathetic and very sort of caring and self-aware human being, but on the other side of the coin, there is this guy that you do not want to fuck with. And I think that tone goes exactly through the entire movie. I mean, how cognizant and how careful did you have to be to really sort of ride the line between not having Akilla be too soft versus having him be too thuggish?
Yeah, I mean, that was the balance. And that is actually truly why I want to work with Saul, because he I mean, his music, and he's written about this, like he's spoken about this, about, you know, the hard men and the men who actually love and the men that feel, and I think he is an artist, he rides that space, and it isn't something that he has to manufacture. And so when we're, you know, rehearsing scenes or blocking them and getting them down and working together, you know, there's a little bit of shaping in places, but it was something that, you know, that a person who holds that to himself, it's like we both, I come from an understanding, like since I was boxing since I was 13 years old, that it's like, you know, you don't have to be pushing a bravado when you understand what you have within you. You don't have to, you don't go picking fights. You don't, if you've been hit in the face before, you know what it feels like. You're not the first one to rah, rah, rah. There's a bit of a samurai code as well, you know, where, or, you know, the way of warriors. And I believe that, that there's peace within that. They don't, the true ones aren't out there picking the fights. They know how to, and in case they have to, but they're not the ones out there displaying this bravado. And I think that that is something where I'm talking about the masculinity, and that we've, I would say the mythology of masculinity, that it's over generations, and it's something that most men, I think, boys, there's a rite of passage. We've been on the playground where we've had to confront somebody who's bigger than us, and we're terrified. And we've been put in positions where we've had to possibly stand up for things, but for what reason? And it's you know, the ability to fight for and identify what you, when you put your fists up, when you put your dukes up, and when you don't. I think there's a real important space to understand that I think, you know, in this world, that if I feel like there was more understanding around that with men, and not needing that place to have to prove themselves with their fists, or with a gun, or with a level of violence to insert a sense of power. What I've learned is that it usually comes from, or it can come from, a place of real insecurity. And that sort of place is we learn that from our fathers, from our big brothers, from our elders, the people that we hang, that guide us from our youth, the ones that we see. And I feel like, you know, there is something, as we're seeing in our current time, that it's that youth are exposed to so much visually over and over again. And I'm just really have these questions about how we are leading our men to be more, you know, aware, and to respect women, and to actually understand their role, that it can be, you know, this idea of vulnerability of being a weakness is not true. And so I feel like Saul embodies that, and we both kind of speak a similar language and understanding, so our shorthand was already in that pocket. And so it was really, it was quite an easy road to move with him. And I would actually say even young Tamela in the film, who plays those dual roles, he comes from that. He has that sort of space. And I think that space of working in the arts, it allows men to actually tap into layers of their masculinity and femininity, and what is more encompassing, that makes us more whole, more, I would say, even more manly. You know,
No, for sure.
Maybe just my philosophy, but maybe it doesn't apply, and someone listens and say, yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit, man. If you, to be a man, you got to like do this and you got to do that. But I believe that the way that our consciousness is turning, as we're moving into these, you know, this generational move, that this reckoning, this awakening, that men have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and I mean, I love that you just mentioned Warrior Code, because it just popped into my head the second that you said it. Because it feels to me that like Akilla and Ghost Dog almost operate in sort of the same universe kind of thing. And there is really this sort of understanding of being on both sides of violence, if that makes any kind of sense.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I see this film, and I mean, I see the way the world is, because I mean, especially as men, we're taught that the masculine thing is to escalate something rather than to de-escalate something. And I'm
Yes.
kind of curious, from your perspective, how important is it, do you think it is, to tell this story of Akilla, which is a story, it's a black story, but it's a story that is it's a masculine story. It's one that shows that you can exist in the violence, but you don't need to embrace it at the same time. If I'm going down the right road.
Absolutely. And that's what I mean by it's like, it's good to know how and not have to, then not know how, then be put in a position that you can't defend or yourself, because not everyone thinks that way. So I do feel that there is that space of just with our men, and that we are really taking a look at our journey, like into and defining what that means to us. I think there's been the idea of, even mythological stories of Achilles, which is why I'm feeding into this great Greek warrior, and he had a weakness, right? And we all do. And I think that there's this false idea that this bravado, this masculinity to actually embrace this sort of violence is the path, is and I'm conflicted with that. I don't believe that is something that you can understand it. You can maybe in a position where it calls for something, but to actually embrace it as something that you love is and want to be engaged in. I don't think that is I think that, and the interesting thing is that wars or whatever, or battles, and I think the objective of those battles is to somehow find a level of power and peace.
Yeah.
And I think that there's just another route to go about that. And with youth and gun violence, and generationally, what we see is that there's a lack of understanding of what this object really truly does. It gives you a false sense of power, and it actually gives you the stage to actually take a life. And I think this idea of escalation, and I think that we can relay this back towards policing. Majority of policing out on the streets, we see a lot of men in those positions. And these men have been brought up in a certain way, and there's this idea of authority and power, and like the cliched statement in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, and it may sound cliche, but it's true that you have to actually tap into that, because now you are in this position carrying a weapon where you have the license to kill, and you do not truly understand what it means to de-escalate a situation. So the person that's stepping into that with that power, with that false sense of ideology of what it means to inflict a level of authority, and be able to resort to a weapon, or to make that statement, or to hold that line, but that only escalates things. It causes fear. It causes a reaction, and this has been a cycle, and at the end of that cycle, or at the end of that situation, I've seen a lot of young Black men, older Black men, succumb to that level of not understanding how to de-escalate a situation, and so I believe that with Akilla and his theory, and trying to come in and save his boy at the end, it's his own Trojan horse that he's kind of creating. He just wants to get the child out of there. He does not want to pull. He's the only person in that final that does not pull out a gun.
Oh. Now, I mean, something else about the film which really just popped for me was because this isn't just a character study. This isn't just a sociological study. This really is a visual study as well. From minute one, we really feel like we're not watching Akilla, we're on his shoulder. We're in his bubble. We're sort of in his world. How big was it for you to make sure that this was something that wasn't necessarily straight from a visual standpoint and was trying to be a little more inventive and a little more immersive, especially with like some of the use of shadow and some of the coloring that you use, especially because most of it, at least for Saul, if I'm correct, most of his shots were at night as opposed to sort of stuff going on during the day with the
Yes.
flashbacks.
Yes. It was very intentional, and it's like, there's this idea of moving through the night and what that is, and choosing to, it's like, the I guess it's like the vigilante or whatever, these characters that come out at night, and there's a level of visual language that I was trying to like not there's this I guess this conflict as well of when you're setting out to make something, is that there's an understanding in my head of like what has been somewhat done, and what people may be expecting. And so that's a bit of a challenge of like, am I going this route and going to, upset people, or not hit something, or like give them what the audience wants. And what helped quell those conversations in my head, or the doubt, was just that I just want to focus in on this character, and create this character study of this boy to a man, and get a sense of of who he is through I think the most formative years of us that form us are when we're young. So showing him in present day in that activity, and then showing him as a boy of the things that his connection with his mother, his connection with his father, his connection with his quote unquote mentor shadow, and being groomed into this world. I felt that there was always with young Akilla that he was destined for something else. Like, and I think that circumstantially we were born into some situations, but it may not really truly be the destiny you were intended for. And so I felt like just staying with him, and being from his point of view, and it was a good test for me because I hadn't done anything like that specifically before. And then we worked with Maya Bankovic, the cinematographer. We really talked about how I've always been, since I was a graphic designer, really tapped into how colors and lighting actually has an emotional effect. And trying to paint, this man as well, like why it wasn't just a frivolous thing that there's like this sort of pinkish neon in his unit where he lives. It's just flipping back to like, what colors would you expect to see in this sort of character who's doing this thing at night, and with this, grow up in this dispensary, and moving, drugs across the city and stuff. Like, what would we expect? And I would be thinking about the opposite of that. And I think that was, there were choices that I was making that I wasn't sure if it would work or not, but I just committed to it, and let the chips fall where they may, because it's again, how many opportunities you have to make a film, and to kind of, do something that is obviously influenced by other elements, and films, and characters and things that I love, but just try to, really be specific with it, where it came from culturally. And again, like within Black culture, there are things that we need to work out, about how we actually, have these personal or collective opinions about something. Like, why does a guy have like a pink light in his room? Like, it could be that really like, no, like, this guy's soft. I'm like, no, he's not soft. He actually feels things, but again, he can kick your ass. Like, and I really truly gravitate to those mentors of mine who've lived like that, and they're surprising some of the things they would do, some of the drinks that they would love, and or the colors that they'd have in their apartment. And it's a bit of I'm drawing from some of these individuals around my life that I've admired and try to put that in this world of Akilla. Yeah.
I think in many ways you may have made a humanistic gangster picture, which really aren't words that go together all that often. But
Yes.
I'm kind of curious from your perspective as a storyteller, is that what draws you into something, trying to give us something a little different inside a familiar shell?
Absolutely. And you hit it. You basically hit my one of my pitch lines. When I was pitching this film, to raise financing for it, I was talking about people would get really hooked on, oh, it's amazing, it's like action, it's like thriller, Charles, yeah, crime. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a crime drama with soul and with a humanitarian point of view. And that is part of my essence. I don't feel like I need to be adding to the canon of just making this material and just having the shoot 'em ups and just having this sort of thing. I really feel like there is soul to human beings. We're all born with a soul. Why does it disappear suddenly because we are choosing to make a genre film?
Yeah.
And so those are the questions that I have, and it may not add up to folks, and folks will look at me sometimes side-eyed or squared and not be sure they're or being saying like, like I remember there was notes even about like this. There was a scene where young Akilla is talking to, these Latino gangsters, and they're quoting like, um, Homer.
Yeah.
It's just, but I feel like there's more to people. There's more to individuals, again, beyond the circumstances that they are in. Some people really like to read. Because you're a gangster or because you come from this world doesn't mean that you could be a good painter. Like you may be a good cook. Like, so I feel like those sort of things are trying to find for myself is trying to find actually the human entry point with whatever I'm touching. And right or wrong, that's my approach. And I feel like that gives me a sense of that alone will set something, whether people like it or not, will set it somewhat apart.
And I think this does set itself apart because, I mean, on the surface, people may look at something like this and want it to be New Jack City. But when you
Yes.
really look at the character of Akilla, he's Wesley Snipes and he's Ice-T at the same time. That's
Yes.
kind of the point, that
That's
there is complexity in these neighborhoods, and there's real sort of issues and sort of complexity and sort of character that can exist inside these people who exist on the streets.
Absolutely. And it's this idea that, again, those boxes, when I was growing up and I'd see, young boys that look like me on the cover of the newspaper, and, I had dreadlocks, and my mom's like, no, everyone's going to just think that you are that. Cut your hair. And I'm like, no, they don't know my soul. They don't know my intentions. If this is the idea of that there isn't more to somebody, that's a falsehood. And I know that cinema does these sort of things, but I feel like what other better medium to actually, I mean, through novels and books, definitely, and music and storytelling, but there is that aspect of they're actually three-dimensional. There's something more. And I love that. I love that in the idea of infusing something with that level of that point of view is something that it just resonates with me. And I think that it just allows a little bit of space and maybe a little less pressure on trying to, I guess, appease a certain sort of audience that may be expecting just this line of A to B, that you can steer off the line. I think that's also the magic of cinema, that it could be a nonlinear, movement of storytelling. And that, yeah, like there's plot driven things and there's character driven things. And and I personally gravitate, especially if I'm making a film, it's not a television series or something where it has to be in this sort of way and all that, that it allows that creative space to just re have a second look at how you can fuse those things together. And that was the attempt. I mean, that was truly at the core of it, of even dually casting young Tamela, where I was surprised when I mentioned that to folks. I was waiting all the way up to when we getting to day one of shooting, that I was like, when is someone going to say, Charles, you can't do that? And it's going to be too confusing or this. And I was like, it may be, but I'm going to trust my instinct on this and go with that. And I think that is the way you do grow as a creative person as well. You got to try something and not sometimes always, do the thing that might work or that you think is safe, at the risk of maybe alienating or confusing somebody. But you don't know unless you try.
Well, and you know what? That's the important thing. And I mean, especially these days, given the way the business is, I mean, yeah, it's harder to make movies, but at the same time, because there's so many avenues to watch things, like it feels like there's almost a little bit more freedom to try different things and to not
Yes.
get to from A to B in a straight line. And I mean, I think Akilla, this film really does that so beautifully well. And man, keep up the good work, man. Keep doing the good work. And thank you for the time today, man. This was a hell of a lot of fun. And congratulations again on the film.
Thank you so much, David. It's really, I'll never not feel like, whew, wow, somebody actually got it or someone felt it. And I'll never take that for granted. And so I really am grateful for the time and for you to watch it, like even twice. Like thank you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.